Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, the host of Simply Sarah. And this episode, this conversation is one that you're going to want to listen to the very, very end. But before we get about to the end, let's talk about the beginning. I'm so excited that you are here, that you are listening in live and being able to share this later on with people who need to hear this, who you want to have hear this. And also for the people who are choosing to come in later on to listen on demand. This is available both on E360 TV, but it's and Achieve TV, but it's also available on sarahstockham.com. If you go to there underneath watch, it'll take you to a place that you can also find it there. Know that every single piece that you write us, that we are responding to, myself and the team, and we're just delighted with how quickly this show is continuing to grow in terms of audience, in terms of impact, because that's what this show is completely about, sharing tools and tips with people so that your lives can be enriched, can be for the better, that you don't need to do the same things that other people have done when you hear the techniques to be able to go a different route. And so we're so excited that you are here today. I'm super excited that Alice Holguin is here. We've been walking life together for a while and had coffee, and we were sitting outside and the coffee shop place was closing up and we were still having a conversation, the two of us, along with several other people as well. And I knew in that moment that the conversation that we were having was going to be one that we would want to be able to share if she was willing and her schedule permitted. And we are so excited because both of those things have happened. So I'm going to bring Alice in. And Alice, welcome to Simply Sarah. Super excited that you are here today.
Hi, Sarah.
And welcome. I would love for you to share any part of your story that you would like to. I know you in several different capacities, one that we met through working at a internationally renowned hospital. You had been working there along with some other people and then began coming to a community Reiki share that we had. And so that's how we first met. And since that point, we've been walking life together, and you've taken classes to do other things and have been impacting so many people's lives. I would just love for you to share whatever you want to out of any of your story, but I'm just so pleased that you're here.
Thank you, Sarah. Happy to be here. Well, my spiritual journey, of course, with a lot of us, we look hindsight that our journey has started way long time ago, but we didn't realize what it was we were experiencing. So I came from the corporate world, worked there for over 42 years in management, working with employees, and didn't realize that a lot of the stuff that I was doing with my employees, engaging with them, had an intuitive, empathic impact because I was able to relate with them. I was able to, kind of have this ability to understand where they're coming from and kind of get their needs fulfilled. So as I was approaching what I thought would be my retirement, I knew that I had to think about something else that I need to do after retirement. So at minimum, I believe it was like 2 years before I intended to retire, I did join a Reiki team that's at the Huntington Hospital in Pasadena. So I did that after work for 2 years to get my feet wet and to see if that's what I want to do when I retired. So, of course, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I met a lot of terrific people. So I was able to work on patients, giving them Reiki, and then I saw the benefit of, their peace of mind, their body relaxed, and we got reports that their pain management was reduced tremendously as well. So I saw that what we were doing as far as the hospital and the patients with Reiki was a benefit, was helping them to engage their own healing response for their bodies to heal. So after I retired in 2019 is when I started to do the Reiki with the patients more frequently. And then, of course, COVID happened. So we ended up stopping the in-person Reiki and started to do the virtual Reiki.
And in that place, I found such an interesting transition because we had been talking about being able to go in person, not just for the patients who are at the hospital who were requesting this. And I really appreciate Huntington as being one of a number of hospitals that allow people to come in to do Reiki because there is this evidence of how it does decrease stress and concern. And I don't know about the people who are listening in, but the times that I've been in the hospital have felt very, very sterile and have felt very alone at moments. And just knowing that somebody that maybe I don't know but who speaks the language of energy can come in and can see me during those times can be such a huge, impactful thing. And I've also always appreciated that when I've gone into the hospitals to some of my clients who've had surgery there, after surgery, it's just how open that they are. Yes, get your badge, but come in and come see and come log on. And just love that they are such a community-oriented and yet forward-thinking hospital with that as well. And in that place then, from going from patients into for the nurses, there literally had been a room set aside with Reiki beds, which is a massage table where you take the headpiece off, but also the ends of the table have a space, rather than having an X like most massage tables do, that's like a horseshoe that you put your knees underneath if you want to, if you are sitting to do Reiki. And so that there were tables there set up, everything was ready to go, and that was the day that we in California shut down. And so there became this conversation then about what are we going to do next and how do we do this because of all of these people who were willing to help when you were sitting at home looking for things, ways to be able to impact the world for better. And then you're right, this virtual Reiki opportunity came along in order to be able to work in those areas as well. And so as you have been walking this walk, where are the things or what are the things that you have seen in us that have been able to encourage you as a practitioner, somebody who's this beautiful sharing type, to be able to continue to come, to be able to continue to give? What are some of the things, how do you get fed, I guess is the question I'm asking, in all of this that you do where you give?
I'm sorry, Sarah. I can't hear you.
Oh,
I'm sorry. You're groveled, and I didn't know how to
tell me? Okay.
to tell you.
That's okay. Is the sound any better now?
Yes, yes. So I didn't even understand your question, so I couldn't answer.
Not a problem. So what I was asking was when you have, with going in person versus coming to a place of being um, virtual, you are such a person who gives so much. How are you able to, what are you getting, how are you getting fed, Alice, in order for you to continue to come back and want to continue to do all the volunteer work that you're doing?
You know what's been helpful? I know a lot of people don't believe or don't feel that you're getting the same kind of energetic healing from in person versus virtual. But the feedback that we're receiving from the nurses has been amazing. The insights and the insights that we receive from our Reiki session regarding the nurses, we do share with the nurses. And they often come back and confirm to us what we had noticed about their energy. So it's very rewarding to know that we've impacted the nurses, as well as other people that we have sent virtual Reiki to. So it is real, it does work. And to hear their feedback and to know that we are helping them with their healing process in whatever method that is. Everyone's journey is different. But to know that we are part of their journey by us sitting them healing is very rewarding.
It is consistently rewarding. So in this place then, during the shutdown, you began to take classes and have conversations with other people about different kinds of methodologies and different kinds of pieces of healing. What have you found in terms of walking life? Because in the hospital, sometimes grief is part of that process, right?
Yes.
What have you found to be tools or things that you have learned along the way that have been helpful, potentially for yourself, but for sure for other people as well?
Well, I do want to share that, again, to way I see life, when you get hit with these challenges and obstacles, they're there to push you forward. And we don't see that when it's happening. We feel like, why me? Why again? Why does this keep happening to me? But I've come to understand that it's not happening to me, but it's happening for me because of these areas that I thought were very difficult to go through. Now that I've passed through that, the dark side of that, I see where that helped me grow and made me who I am today. So, a little bit about what I went through during the whole pandemic era was my spouse of over 30 years had been progressively declining in health. So it just all came, right around the COVID time where his health really started to decline. So, as life has it, I had retired in 2019 and then had to step into the role of a caregiver.
Wow.
So I did that for I would say probably 2 years of active caregiving. So I say, fortunately, that COVID happened. I was able to be home and provide. His name is Ruben. Provide him with the caregiving that he still needed.
Yes.
So I was able to put into practice, my Reiki healing energy to provide him comfort.
Yes.
Because you can see the anxiety, you can see the angst, you can see the pain, and there's no words that can provide the comfort because we're not experiencing it. But what I can do is provide him healing, love, and light to help him cope with his transition.
And in that, Alice, how did you as a caretaker still carve out time for your inner being, for the conversations that you were having with yourself? Because as you saw him getting weaker and weaker, obviously you knew at some point that that transition would be taking place. So, what were you doing? How did you care for yourself as you were in this role of active caregiver?
It's very easily to get, and I can totally understand from a caregiver's point of view, to get caught up in that where you want to give as much as you can. I can save him. I can, you think that you have the magic bullet that can take care of it. So, to a point where you are depleting yourself completely. So, and that's where the burnout comes from because you don't know how to set the boundary. You don't know when enough is enough. So I think it did get to a point where I totally was feeling like I had nothing else to give. And that's not good for him. And that's not good for me either.
Right.
When you're on the airplane, the first thing they tell you is you have to save yourself before you can save anyone else on the plane. So I had to make that choice. I had to make that decision. Like, no one's going to take care of me but me. So I did make sure that his needs were met. Anything that he needed, he was comforted, he was fed, everything was fine. I didn't need to be on a vigil watch 24 hours, 7 days a week. So I had to carve time for myself, for my own peace of mind, for my sanity. So I created a little safe sanctuary place in my home, which is my bedroom, where that is where, I mean, I painted it, I made it really lively, candles, my essential oils. It was my safe place for me to go unwind. So I set a time frame. I mentioned I made sure that Ruben was fed, everything was taken care of. And I talked to him. I had to tell him what my needs were and that I was burning out and I was no good to the both of us. So I said, you know what, consider me off the clock at 6 o'clock or 7, whatever the case may be. And I need to like detach from this and go into the other room and decompress. Not that I wouldn't be available, if he needs me and I need to be there. I'm just down the hall. But I need to know that I can disconnect at a certain time and my job was over. And I can just be Alice, not Alice the caregiver.
Yes.
So that helped with my sanity quite a bit,
Mhm.
quite a bit. And I went in there with my dogs, and that was a place for me to unwind from the day and recharge myself, recharge my spirit, recharge my soul.
Alice, I so appreciate you sharing this part of the story because I think it is so important as people are continuing to do life and still, and this is happening more and more in America, I think around the world as well, but more and more in America, where I'm hearing people who are choosing to take early retirement, partial retirement, or change jobs in order that they can have more flexibility to be taking care of people, being caregivers. And so, inside of that, I really appreciate your wisdom that you are sharing here about taking the time to know that you have needs as well, and then being able to create a schedule for what that's going to look like for you to be able to have some downtime. And I was thinking as you were talking about you were just down the hall, to me, that's a little bit like, people, my husband for years worked about an hour and a half each direction away from home. And that commute time was sometimes office time, still where he was talking with people. But sometimes that commute time for him was listening to really great podcasts or shows or other things where he was being fed during that time. It was definitely a transition space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that when
Yes.
he got home, he was home. And I love that you had this hallway to walk down, taking your dogs with you, creating this new routine or a different routine in order to have that so that you were having your own transition space going
Mm-hmm.
from work and being very, very present and then having some downtime, some space for yourself. And I love that you painted the walls.
Yes.
What a great idea. That just quickly changes the energy in a room, right?
Yes, because I felt the whole house was, anyone who's gone through the active dying process, which is what he was going through,
Yes.
will understand and can relate that, because everything is energy, that you feel it throughout the entire house.
Yes.
So I had to change the energy in my room so that way it's almost like stepping behind a curtain. And it's like I leave that and come into a new, vibrant, a new energy that recharges me.
Yes.
So, yes.
Wow, that's just so, so, so profound. So have you always have dogs? Because I know that you have puppies right now that you're training, and it's just so delightful. But the whole time that I've known you, you've had dogs. But has that been something that you've had around all of your life?
I've had dogs growing up, and I had dogs when my sons were small at home. And to me, I got the dogs for them,
Ah,
but
yes.
not until until they moved down. I mean, not till they got older is like that. I'm getting dogs for me. That the side part that they can, engage with the dog is a plus. But I realized like, no, this is for me. I don't, the dogs are for me. So it brings me lots of joy. It helps balance me
Yes.
and ground me. And again, their energy is pure love. So it does not matter, and it's unconditional love. Does not matter what type of day you're having. Does not matter how you look. If you're frazzled, you just got up, your hair's a mess. They are always happy to greet you. They always want to love on you, and it can turn any bad day into a smile. So, you
Yes.
know, they're a part of my life, and I will always have dogs.
Yes. Yes. We are in the in between stage with animals. However, um, when my father was dying, we had two corgis, two Welsh Pembroke corgis, and part of my um, solace space was to go out and garden, to dig a little bit, just to be with the flowers, to be out there. And I just found that I could really hear my own emotions and process things differently by being outside. But I was never alone. It wasn't that I had angels around me. Yes, I did that as well. But at least one of the dogs was always with me and was just kind of checking in. And every now and then I get a little, wet nose on my arm saying, hey, what are you up to? What are you working on? And just that reminder to come back into the moment.
Yes.
And you're right. They don't care. They just want to be with you and want to make sure that you're okay. And what an
Yes.
absolute blessing that is. So I think that you've gone from larger dogs to perhaps smaller dogs. Was that a conscious decision, or is that just how it happened?
To me, for me, it's how it happened. But again, I don't look at things as it just had. There's a reason why I have puppies. I
Yes,
I have always had rescue dogs,
yes,
always.
that's very
And I wasn't looking for puppies. I've never raised puppies. They're like having little babies, so it's a lot of work. So that was not my intent to get puppies. But a friend of mine, her dog had litters, and she said, you need to take a look at these dogs. And she's also a very spiritual person. She goes, these dogs, they're meant for you. Oh, a dog is meant for you.
Yes.
So, and it's true what they say, the dog will pick you.
Mm.
So one dog just walked right up, and she was a puppy, walked right up to my lap and just licked me, and she picked me.
Wow.
And then another one followed. So and the other ones in the pack did not even look at me or come my direction.
Incredible.
So it's amazing. I knew that these two dogs were to be mine.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's been, like I say, they've incorporated, they've been part of my life now. They're adapting to me. I'm adapting to them.
Yes.
And to me, they're part of my spiritual team.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we get back, we're going to have a more conversation with Alice on things that are impacting her life in such a positive way.
Do you feel like you've been having to work hard to be healthy? I have felt like this too. My name is Christy Jones, and I'm a holistic health and mindfulness coach and educator. And I have found some efficient and simple ways that we can really help maintain our health, even in challenging times. We know we are in a time where our food is nutrient lacking. We're not always getting the nutrients that we need from our food. We also know we're in a time of more toxicity than we even want to think about. Yet there are still things that we can do that help us to support our health and well-being. One of the things that I recommend for my clients and I use for myself to achieve that is a product called ASEA. Now, what I love about ASEA, gives our body exactly what it needs. Our body makes something called redox molecules. And redox molecules are our cell-to-cell communication. They help our cells to communicate, to know what to do in our body to achieve our optimal health. Now, when we do not have enough redox molecules in our body and our cells are not communicating, what do you think is going to happen? We may deal with some of the health challenges and the fatigue that many of us experience. However, when you have those molecules, you have enough redox molecules, you're setting yourself up for a foundation of health. So what is ASEA? ASEA provides our body with the exact redox molecules that many of us are lacking so that we can support our health and well-being.
I am so excited to return and be here with you. Alice has been sharing some of her really profound ways of being able to negotiate a whole bunch of different things in life. After a 30-year incredible love, she found that he was in that space of transitioning, and in that began to build into her own schedule, her own time, her own space, physically also, a space where she could have time for herself, time to be renewing, time to be listening, and making sure, yes, that the person that she's loved and is caring for is okay, but also recognizing that she needed to be taking care of herself at the same time. I think that that's when it's such a critical thing. When my grandmother was at a point where she needed to go into a nursing home, what they called it back in the day, my grandfather was pushing the wheelchair and taking her in. And the people at the front desk literally said, "We aren't sure which one of you is coming here to be checked in, to come," because my grandfather was so gaunt from taking care of my grandmother. He was not taking care of himself at all. And it took a while for his energy to come back. And yes, he would still go visit her every day, right? All those pieces were there. But just that space of not taking care of himself. And so I really appreciate the wisdom that she is sharing here, and whatever the care is that you are giving for somebody else, to really be able to have a place where you are able to step aside, to listen internally, to be able to take care of yourself as well. And as I bring Alice back into our conversation, Alice, I just so appreciate you sharing that. And now that you have these puppies, this new life, this new that's taking place for you, what are some of the other tools that you have found to be so helpful in terms of taking care of yourself?
Well, when I was going through, I want to share that when I was going through the whole caregiving, when 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 Ruben did finally transition and passed away, you're in a spot where it's like, now what? Because your focus has been that one person for the longest time, and it kind of defines you.
Mm.
So it's almost like, now what? So you're left, and that's part of the grieving stage that you go through, is because now it's like, who am I? What do I do now? And you're dealing with your own identity, and then on top of that, the grief of missing the person. So there's a gamut of emotions that come forward. Um, and I knew that I had be busy and keep busy. And I'll never and thinking, and I started to think back at a time when just before COVID, he was already, failing health, and I had gone to the gym, and I was just taking an exercise class with a group of people, and this emotion came over me out of nowhere in the middle of the exercise class with this group of people, where I felt this immense wave of sadness come over me, and I was tearing. And I questioned myself, afterwards, like, where the heck did that come from? And I realized that what that was the emotions that I was holding in, because I was grieving, knowing that he's going to pass. You start the grieving process way before. You don't grieve the day after they pass. You grieve, especially if you have the opportunity or the fortunate opportunity to know that they're going to pass. That allows you that mindset that every time, every minute counts. So knowing that he's going to be passing, even a year prior, I didn't realize that I was grieving already the loss that I know was coming. So when I did this physical workout, it moved the energy inside of me of grief and came out into these tears, and my body and again, I was totally surprised, but that's what that was, is that movement, that energy created this. I just only picture it as this block, or this blob of sadness and grief in my body, like a blob, and me working out and sweating and getting my blood pumping and getting everything going, just expanded that blob and just fell apart and came out of me. So that, fast forward to after he passed, I realized, you know what? I need to get moving. I need to move my body, because I don't want the energy to get stuck in me with grief.
Right.
So I went back to the gym and started working out, starting sweating, starting doing all of that I knew was good for my body to move it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't me, okay, I'm going to get fit. I'm going to be, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about the cosmetic. It was that I had to move. I had to process the grief.
Mm-hmm.
I had to process that. So that's how I kept my self-care going.
Yes.
And I continue that to this day. And it's been 2 years already. And I truly believe that helped me go through my grief process. I don't want to say quicker, but more smoothly than it probably would have, because I had an outlet.
Yes. Did you find yourself that what you wanted to eat changed through this process, or how often that you were reaching for a water bottle changed during the process as well?
Yes, because if And I think it's a mindset or a switch that happens to you. It's like if you're all of a sudden, if you're starting to take care of your body, and that's a lot of work to go to the gym and work out, and it takes a lot of commitment. So it's like if I'm putting all this effort and it's not pleasant, I don't want to ruin my gains by eating unhealthy. And it's like, oh, if I'm doing this, I might as well kick it up a notch and start eating better. Or let me kick it up a notch and take care of my mental health. Let me start doing, some breathing exercises. Let me start doing some yoga. Let me start doing more things that is my self-care. So because I was so depleted that it took a while for me to get Alice back. So the self-care was critical, and no one's going to get you back to yourself than you. No one's going to have your back that way.
And I think that part of the message also is that when a loved one that we've been walking life with transitions, we're still here. And we are still here because there's still this beautiful creative energy flowing through us.
Yes.
And so if that's true, then there are still things that we can be doing. Now, is it okay to sleep for 12 or 14 hours as you're kind of coming out of all of that? Absolutely. And one of the things that I've noticed about grief is that I can't drink a lot of water quickly. I have to sip it over time, that my body still needs it. However, having a whole lot at once just makes me feel very, very nauseous. And so that's one of the ways that when I know that I have come into a season of grief, is to be watching how much water I can drink in a sitting is one way of saying it. And just that dehydration that we truly, when we're under that type of stress, I heard a compounding pharmacist once say, we literally dry from the inside out. And so being able to keep that going. But I also love what you're talking about, that nobody is going to do the work for you. And one of the pieces that I have felt also has been, I feel so alone. Why would I go do, right? And yet you had already found, knowing that you were already beginning this grieving process. And grief can come from any type of loss of, people who have had to move out of their homeland due to disruptions, whether it happens to be natural disasters or war or other instabilities, right? Grief can come even when you have applied for and gotten a huge promotion, that you are letting go of some things that were comfortable, that were good. It's that unteasing, right? The letting go of and being okay in a new space with things being different. That's a little bit about how I see grief. And so it's not about being Pollyanna, that you're happy all the time.
No.
But it is about being able to recognize that feeling, to know it. And I loved how you talked about, doing something that was just something that you were choosing to do, going to the gym, and then to feel this flood of emotion come through you, and how you were able to identify and not be embarrassed by it, to say, wow, that was, I know what that is. I can feel it now. I understand what that is. And to come to a place of saying, wait, now that we're on the other side and we are truly in that, what I would call a trough. These are my words, not yours. They're a trough of grief, right? This coming into this space of birthing into the grieving, the letting go process, and allowing that person to fully transition, and not trying to hold them back, right? To give them that gift of letting go. For me, it's about holding on to all of the things that they taught me, and to be able to, each time that there are certain things, tools that I use, I will remember my dad teaching me how to use them. And so that energy of my father showing up still in that place of now means that his energy is continuing on, right? He's eternal. That energy is continuing on. And so as we remember them, as we use their recipes, as we go to their favorite places, that energy just can continue to show up, and for us to choose, if we want to be grateful, to continue to be grateful. So speaking of that, how did you handle going to places that you guys used to go now that you were without him, now that he had transitioned? How did you help yourself in that process?
Well, it was difficult. It was difficult. I mean, I mean, even like, again, driving through the area, going to certain restaurants, listening to certain songs. I mean, especially towards the, the early stages of the grief is overwhelming because and it's like you don't know when it's going to hit you. It's like a flood that overcomes you. You can be at the market and some song comes out on the overhead and it just all of a sudden you feel that lump in your throat. So, what I have learned that's very important, grief must be felt. You cannot, and no one, most people do not like that uncomfortableness of that feeling. So they push it down, they suppress it. They try to do other things than to feel the grief. They may keep themselves busy at work. They may decide to, I'm going to, overeat, or I'm going to drink, or I'm going to take some more sedatives, anything to the excess, just to avoid feeling that uncomfortable feeling of grief. So but the best thing you can do, think of grief as having a consciousness. It just wants to be felt. That's all. Feel the grief, allow it to come through you. Even if you have to deal with it a minute at a time, it just wants to be felt. Because if you don't deal with the grief, it will manifest somewhere else in your body. So, and you're right. You said earlier, we carry grief and there's a lot of grief that we carry from our past childhood. I mean, from our childhood, from growing up. There may have been, a divorce that I have grief that I still carry. I didn't realize that I hadn't processed that. Right. Or there's that, that job that I wanted, a promotion, I didn't receive it. So, or I got fired. So there's grief of losing that job. Or I lost my home. I lost a best friend who passed away. All these things are grief. It doesn't have to be a death of a person. It's an ending of something that you cared about. So if we're not processing that grief when it's occurring, guess what? We pack it down. So what I come to I found out through this journey of grieving, this latest grieving, is that you have to feel it. And grief heals you, because this grief that I felt was so intense that it opened up that Pandora's box of all my other griefs that I felt that did not process. So all these feelings just came forward, things that I didn't realize I had a problem, or that I had suppressed an ending or a grief on. So I was dealing with a lot of grief. So there was so much healing. So grief does heal you if you allow it to do its magic. So don't be afraid of the grief. Feel it. Feel it. I did journaling. I wrote letters to people that I just to forgive them or forgive myself, and to let them go and let go of the grief. So that is very healing to have that closure. So it's almost like you deserve it. You deserve the peace that comes from after experiencing grief. And there is peace if you allow it. But you have to go through the fire to come out to the other side, and you're going to find that peace.
So Alice, as you were writing these letters, did you then choose to also address them and mail them? Or was it sufficient for you? Did you find peace inside of writing them and just letting them, burning them, or letting them be?
For me, it was potent enough for me just to write the letter. And then myself, I like the ceremony of burning.
Yes.
So I burnt them, and the energy that came out of me, or the emotions that came out of me, is now on that paper, no longer stuck in my body. It's on that paper now. And that's why writing, whether it be pen or a pencil, versus the computer, you don't want to do that, because there's something very tangible about using a pen or a pencil and putting it on paper. And you write your emotions, open your heart and spill it all out. That it basically comes out of you, no longer is in that Pandora's box, and it's on paper and you can burn it. You don't have to mail it to anyone. You don't have to share it with them. Just know that your soul has forgiven that soul.
Yes.
And hopefully that soul has forgiven you without you even having to speak to them. Because there's people that have passed on that you cannot receive an apology from.
Right.
But know that when we pass, our soul is still there. So you can still have the healing that takes place from soul to soul.
And I think that's one of the things that I learned so deeply early on in the practice of Reiki was that living on Earth, this experience that we're having right now, that we have very, very specific connections to time and very specific connections to space. But yet in the energetic world, those things are not the same. And so for me, I was able to go back, and there had been things that had happened. My aunt and uncle were killed in a car accident when I was 13 years old. So remembering being in the church, remembering the feeling of the benches, remembering just different parts, the scent of the flowers, some of those kinds of things, right? And wanting to go back now as an adult with different experiences in my life with grief, and knowing that grief will not overtake the rest of my life. Finally coming to that understanding gave me permission to be able to go back, and it happened very, very quickly. I didn't need to spend a lot of time with it. It happened very, very quickly for me to be able to go back and be with that younger version of myself and say, hey, we are okay. Yes, take all of this in. Yes, it is incredibly sad. And life is going to continue at some level in some ways, but we're never going to forget, right? We're going to continue to use the recipes and remember the jokes and talk about the polyester pantsuits and all the different things, right? And so those, allowing those pieces to come. We're going to get another quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have more with Alice. One of the places that I've had the joy of spending time, investing time, allowing my soul to grow has been at the Aldea Coba. And I was so fortunate that on my very first trip that I went there, that Alice was there as well. And that in that space that we got to really look at life through a different lens, through a shamanic lens, with the people that we were there with working and talking with Mayan shamans that were there as well. And in this place about talking about grief, she mentioned fire. And one of the things that I really came to understand very, very differently in this particular time when we were in Coba was the gift of fire. All the different things that fire can do. Yes, it can burn up old letters and old things that we have written, but also allowing that smoke to rise and to be able to see that that smoke is now also part of what we are breathing. And that as we are breathing this out, we are letting go of it. And if there's any part of it that needs to come back for us to revisit a different level, it certainly can. But some people will use writing. And in that process of writing, I love how Alice shared about writing in hand, paper, doing it with a pen or a pencil. I was talking recently with a grief counselor, and she was sharing how there is something that happens inside of our brain that is really, really different. And I think that Alice beautifully alluded to that by saying that our emotions come out differently. And so maybe for some people, I'm not an oil painter or a watercolor painter. That's not my specialty. But maybe for some people, using art is a way of doing that. I have wondered sometimes about when people run for long distances, if that they are also, because when we feel hard emotions come out with our, especially anger, with our feet, with our hands, and with our mouth. And Brian Tracy has written about this. And so some people will find that running is really good for them. Some people will find that boxing is. A number of people have found that swimming, because you're using your full body, but that whole thing also about the mouth. And so for some people, they choose to be very, very vocal in their anger. Other people will choose to chew a lot, whether it happens to be gum or food or something else, really keeping their mouth very, very active. But all of these different things can have two sides to the coin. And so as Alice and I are continuing this conversation, Alice, I would love for you to share some of the things that have been joyous things that you have discovered after going through the process of burying Reuben, going through that initial grief where it just will catch you off guard in a grocery store, sitting in the car, sitting at a stoplight. I remember one time for myself, and just, kind of where you are doing life, but yet not suppressing, no longer choosing to press that down because it festers, choosing to allow that to come forward and to be able to listen in those spaces. So what are some of the joyous things that you have found in this life after part?
It's a cliche, you hear it all the time, but I truly do not take life for granted. I don't take my health for granted either. As much as we think we're going to be here forever, we're not going to be here forever. We're all going to take that same path to the whatever's on you believe is on the other side. We will all do that. So seeing life through a different lens now that I've experienced death, the polar opposite is life. So to live life, enjoy things, even being still with myself, is I enjoy my company. I enjoy the stillness. I enjoy, when I do meet with my friends and family, it's special to me because every interaction now means something more. So I just see life differently now that I've experienced death firsthand. And I have experienced death before with my mother. I was there when she passed away. But I think I was a different mindset back then. I wasn't where I am now, where I see things for what they are. And I try to look for the meaning and experiences behind everything that happens, because nothing just happens because it just happens.
Oh, that's so powerful. And then I don't want to, I want you to answer this however you want to, but there's always the first year of firsts, right?
Yes.
So you have the first Christmas, you have the first gatherings of things, whatever it happens to be, that first Cinco de Mayo, first all of it, and so how did you begin to process through preparing yourself when those first would come?
Yes, and it is true. The first of everything, the first year will be the most difficult. It's even difficult as I want to say the party dies down, but everyone's visiting you, they're bringing you food, and the whole that comes along with the funeral, and where it gets to be is lonely or quiet is when everyone's gone. Everyone's living their life. They've gone on doing what they normally do, and you're there with your thoughts. So it's just it's difficult because you have that awkward silence that you have not become accustomed yet. So you have to you're establishing new patterns and new habits, but the first year is difficult. And, you have to prepare yourself. It's like, okay, all right, Christmas is coming up, Thanksgiving's coming up. That was the thing we like to celebrate and have big gatherings. So, I anticipated that, and I prepared myself. It's like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to act or feel, but I'm going to allow that feeling to take place.
Yes.
And then so you have to experience the first of everything, as difficult as it is. Don't run away from it. Don't try to substitute with something else. Is feel it. Whatever the feeling is, it's not going to kill you. It will be uncomfortable, but once that day is over, it's another day.
Yes.
So you again, making yourself get through the first of everything is, and then knowing like, okay, I've done all that. Now the rest of it is, I have to keep living. I'm here for a reason. I'm alive for a reason. So, not to diminish anything about the person who's passed away or what they've meant to you. It's just I'm not going to squander the rest of my life that I have left. I have to live it. And the best thing you can do to honor anyone is to live the best life that you can. I mean, I try to put myself, it's like, okay, if I was in heaven, which I'm assuming I'm going to be in heaven, if I'm in heaven and I'm looking down at my loved ones who are grieving me, that will probably cause me more angst and pain than knowing that they're living their best life.
Yes.
They're having fun, they're laughing, they're going out, they're traveling, they're having friends, they're not sitting around crying over my loss.
Right.
That will give me more pleasure.
Yes.
Knowing that they're live their life. Yes, they will miss me. They will always miss me.
Right.
But they're honoring me by living life because I want to live life. And that's the best thing that you can do is for me, as I'm going through the whole grief process, is I'm showing my sons, my adult sons.
Yes.
I'm showing people around me because everyone's like, how's Alice going to act? I'm assuming that because we haven't had death in the family for a long time. So all eyes are on me with how is she going to be? How is she acting? How is she? So, so I went through my grief process. I went through my crying. As uncomfortable as it was for people to see me cry or hear me cry, I made them very uncomfortable, but I'm not going to squelch my pain and my emotions so someone can feel comfortable, because that's a real emotion that I was feeling. And that's what grief looks like. It's ugly. But I need to be an example of how to process grief.
Yes.
And that there is still love and peace on the other side.
Yes. Yes. Alice, we're coming to a close of our conversation, but if there's just one nugget that you want to reiterate, that someone has listened to this point and is like, Alice is saying things that are really important. If there is one thing that you would love to just reiterate, I'd love for you to do that now.
Don't take life so serious. Don't take it so serious. Do not try to be in control of every aspect of your life.
Yes.
It's going to unfold how it's going to unfold. If you trust the process and you allow it to reveal itself to you, whether, whoever you believe in, if you believe in God, spirit, whatever your belief system is, their plan is much greater than my plan. So for me to try to make my plan work out how I think it should be, never going to be good enough. And it causes me more anxiety because it's not working out the way I planned it. So surrendering and letting it go and let the process unfold is much greater, much more beautiful than you can even imagine in your own mind. So let go of the control. Let someone else do the control of the car. You let it go, be a passenger.
Yeah. And then just one thought about you choosing to retire after 42 years. Thank you so much for all of those years of encouraging people in the corporate world and being there to listen. Were there plans that you had made that helped you do that transition in a way that felt really good for you?
They do say, which I totally agree, you need to be prepared for retirement. Because like my work that I've worked the same company for 42 years, I was like, I won't say I was somebody, but I was somebody at that company.
Yes.
And it defined who I was, and I had a reputation, and it was like, it was me.
Yes.
In a sense that consumed me, and to go from that role to, it's like, that role is totally gone now. I have to now redefine myself. And it's you can go into a depression because it's like, who am I now? What am I? So you have to like reinvent yourself again. So having a little what you're going to do afterwards, have a little plan in place does help. What is it that you want to do? You have all the time now. What do you want to do? And start taking steps before you retire to get those plans in action, get some things going. So when you do retire, then you can transition into that without any kind of issues.
Wow. Alice, thank you so much for sharing this incredible wisdom with us. It has been absolutely our delight for us to be together today. And audience, thank you so much for listening to this point. I know that you have gained so much as I have. We'll see you next time.